Okay, I've got the recording option. Super. Okay, I'm going to start.
Good.
Hey, uh, I'm going to ask Hal to introduce himself. John and I know each other very well, and when we get a few more people on, I'll introduce John. So, Hal, would you
Sure.
introduce your illustrious self, please?
Well, my illustrious self is somewhere else, but good morning, John. I'm Hal Tursch.
Good morning, sir.
I'm in Minnesota.
Oh,
I'm
great.
an American shark, I guess. Been hanging around these guys for a couple of years now. I think I'm embarking on year 52 of coaching hockey, NCAA all the way. This year it's going to be up. Are you in the U.S. or are you in Canada?
I'm in Vancouver right now. Yeah,
Vancouver.
I was in Calgary before, and then I've been trying some new frontiers here in Vancouver. Yeah. So it's cool.
So I'm going to be coaching what we call peewees.
Oh, great! Great.
I don't know what, but USA Hockey doesn't use that term anymore. They use U something or use U13, I guess, is what they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there you go. They went the soccer way.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of. I have lifetime exemption on coaching seminar or certification, but they came up with a whole batch of new things that everybody has to do every year.
Yes.
So I've been spending hours on my computer watching videos hosted by coaches that I know, I've known for a long time. But anyways, the Sharks has been really a fun platform to talk about sort of new ways of doing things and things that are better for the players and help them to better players. So I'm going to be leading a couple coaches in with a peewee team in our local community that won, I think, one game last year. Or maybe it's been one game in 2 years. And everybody says they're not very good. So the bar's pretty low. And, the intention is to overachieve and beat expectations by a massive amount, but I don't know. I don't know any of the kids. So, we'll have fun and the kids will get better. And, what else can you ask for? Right?
So. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
Well, she's 8:30 now, so there should be a few more people joining. John, I'm just to make you familiar with the audience. When people have questions, I'll get them to introduce themselves a bit. We're all the same. We're old and experienced. And
come on, we just.
I think what age teaches you is you realize how little you know and
yes,
how
sir.
much there is to learn.
Yes.
So the term shark came from Tim Bothwell. He called us no dead sharks. He doesn't want any dead sharks because it comes from a Woody Allen movie, John, and his wife asked him or girlfriend in the movie, "What do you think of our relationship?" And he said, "Well, it's like a shark. It's not swimming. It's not moving forward. It's not breathing. It's dying." So, and it's actually amazing, Hal. I don't know how you feel, but I went and observed U13 tryouts last night and sat with a couple coaches in the stand evaluating, and I've got a challenge ahead of me just from what went on last night, like something I couldn't imagine. And I should have been ahead of the curve on it, but it has to do with hiring a parent coach and making sure his daughter was good enough to be on the team. And then didn't appear questionable at the spring camp when we were evaluating the coaches and the girls that were daughters. So I just think she's not playing her best right now, and hopefully we can turn it around. But I'm in the middle of it. So you know what it's like in, quote, elite hockey. the expectations when you're coaching is, and especially being a parent coach, when you coach, you're under the microscope and you're actually never good enough. So we just try to keep being good and trying to get better.
Yeah.
John, do you know Tom Malloy at all?
Of course, I know Tom Malloy. I know him for many years, many years.
Yeah,
Remember,
John,
Wally,
with me in the olden days.
yeah, Wally, remember I've been observing people for the last 40 years. So a lot of people that I see in
John's
hockey,
always in the corner.
yeah, and I'll be watching. I watch you. I watch a lot of people. I maybe they don't know, but I've been there watching and observing for many years. So I know a lot of people. They don't know me maybe, but I do know a lot of people.
Well, hell, for your sake, any hockey arena that I've walked into with, national team ice time, college ice time, you name it, John's a soccer guy, but he's there and he's taking notes. And he's done that since the get-go. So his, what do you call, the thirst for knowledge and understanding and different ways of doing things, it's really unique. It actually, when I first saw John, I run into the rinks, I talked to him, but then all of a sudden Hockey Alberta had a clinic and John was running it. And I think maybe Dean was on the ice with him. I'm not sure. And not on the, I don't know if you were on the ice, John, or was it?
No, it was a dry land training session on a small area games. I basically went to dig some material that 2007, I remember now. And
were you experimenting with that ice time, or is it something you've done already?
Always, 2007, we did it at U of C with Dean Holden. I was able to put in practice a lot of the ideas and the, all this game that I was experimenting with. I started a long time. I mean, we got to look backwards here because I started back in the 80s, when I came to Canada and I discovered hockey in 76, exactly. When I watched my first hockey game, October 9, 1976, Boston Canadian. That was the first experience I had with hockey. I asked my dad, what the heck is that? He told me that's ice hockey. I'm like, wow. And then I think from there, this sort of love for the game was born. And I can tell you, I mean, one day I laugh with Dean sometime. We should write a book about, but that's where I think the soccer world and the hockey world collided for me, and that's the start of this beautiful journey in hockey because I learned to skate. I went to a tryout for a AA team at the time in Montreal. I made it. To my surprise, I made the team, and because I learned to skate, I think quite good, but I couldn't play hockey for that matter. My stick handling wasn't there because I never played in my life. But eventually I catch up to many things. And that's where I think everything sort of went that way. And I started coaching very early because I got involved with power skating and they asked, hey, we need volunteer coaches and so on. And, everything goes that way. Went to school out there in French and started learning English too. And it's a long path. And then I started getting these ideas about coaching. I questioned a lot of things from young age. Why? And I was getting trouble because of that, Wally. But at the same time, I think it allows me to start going towards this path of sort of trying to see other ways of coaching. So how to do different things.
To turn on mics.
I have my
Yeah. There's
It's a feedback somewhere there. Is that okay? Yeah. I don't know. Can you hear me or?
Wally, you're muted.
I'm muted. Let me see how I can.
We can hear you, John.
Oh, you can't hear me. Okay, good. Okay.
I just don't know how to turn mine off onto mute. It's not letting me. So
Is that good? Yeah. Can you hear that now? Are you guys good now? I don't know.
I'm good.
Yeah. So yeah, just yeah, and then Wally, I think one thing brings another thing, and playing soccer at the time in Montreal, and got involved in hockey and so on, and you go move forward. 85, Junior was born, and then the quest became more a personal one, and I wanted to give my kids, when Jordan was born in 87 and then Claudia, I wanted to give them something beautiful, hoping they were going to play sports. I was going to make sure of that, but I was questioning a lot of stuff in coaching at the time. And I felt experience personally. I can say I was not the best coach. I think around 20, 25, a lot of yelling. I went through, I think, the same experience like everyone. I copy what I saw. People yelling out there every time, people swearing, and I thought it was the best way to go. And until I saw myself in the mirror somewhere along the line, they were doing a research in Montreal University at the time, and I saw for the first time a video of a coach who basically grabbing a kid by the mask and yelling at him because he wasn't doing good. And this kid was maybe 10 years old. And that moment, I still remember, impacted me so hard. And I say, I will never allow me to be that way. So I really started searching for a different way of coaching. And that brings also how can we teach the game different, and how can we find different ways to allow creativity to foster between the youth, the kids, and at any level for that matter. But and then it's been that way forever. So yeah, it's fascinating, I guess. I cannot hear you, so I.
There I am.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. For everybody that's on, we know John very well, but two other people that know him better than I do, and I'll ask you a question, John, just to help any joiners and to find out more about who you are and what you do. I'm curious about, when did you run into Tom Malloy? Because Tom is doing and has done everything you're doing that is sort of like the major change in the game today. Small area games, touches, decision making, creative thinking for yourself. How did you meet with Tom? And then I'm going to ask you about how did you meet up with Dean, but Tom first.
Well, I think Tom, the first time I heard about him was at Mount Royal University or college at the time. I think that's the first time I think we sort of talked a little bit and sort of, met. But it was more, he was coaching at the time. And I think through when I coached with Dean at the University of Calgary, that's, I think, the time I heard about him and his books for that matter. And and I got the book ABC of Hockey, have it in my collection, and at the same time I was following. I moved to Calgary for one sole reason, was to follow in '96. I talked to Tom Rennie at the time, and I asked him if I could come to Calgary to follow his team for the Olympics, Nagano Olympics in '98, and that's how I ended up in Calgary and meeting Dean eventually, and then Tom. So I followed the team for 2 years. That's another chapter. But I sold everything in Montreal, came with my family here to Calgary for 2 years supposedly, and I stayed 23 years. So yeah, I met Tom briefly. I guess it was more of an opposition coach meeting. We had the chance to talk a few times, but then I met Dean Holden in 2003 when we started coaching together at U of C, and that's another chapter too. So yeah.
Now, Tom, do you remember your first meeting and then how you got connected? Because the work you did with Johanny Walston, the last book you wrote, 2002, with Johanny, I've been looking at it because we had a coach summit, and everything you're doing is what John's advocating, and you were thinking of it with Johanny back in that day. Now I'm talking late 1990s and early 2000. And so what you were doing that long ago, both of you, and I'm sure Dean got into it that way, it is sort of the popular movement today, and is basically teaching hockey sense or sports IQ and thinking and solving problems. So, Tom, do you recall specifically when you ran into him and how you got connected, and then, like sharks, sharing ideas?
I think I was coach of the Mount Royal women, and John came and did a hockey school. We did the summer hockey school. Him and Dean both did it. I think I'd met him before that, and I know we had a few coach meetings talking about different ideas. And I don't know exactly when we first met, but yeah. But John's ideas are very similar to Yusro and mine.
Okay.
You know, and I remember going to Hockey Canada talking to the bigwigs there, and Yusro Johanny was visiting in Calgary, and they kind of met with him, and we're sitting there, and I'm looking at them, and he's talking about using games and all this, and I could see this glazed look in their eyes, you know, that it didn't register in their minds whatsoever as being important to be using games and thinking and all this sort of thing. And John and Dean were two of the only ones that kind of thought the same way. So yeah, it was very, 2003-ish, around like that, I think.
Yeah.
Now, John, I want to let you know there's a gentleman, and Dean. Do you know Greg Revac, Dean? Your sound's off, Dean.
Yeah. Well, there. I've heard the name. I'd have to know more about him to know if I know
What
him.
I'm going to tell you is, it's like he's invented this. Okay, if you could shut off your sound, other people, we won't get the echo. So Tom and Dean, there. Okay, that's good. No echo. Anyway, Greg, his site, and it's the site of the day, popular around North America. He works with Darryl Belfry closely, who's the guru of elite coaching and developing elite athletes. He's doing it, so you should. And I have sent links out of his sports. It's called Hockey IQ, his site. I suggest you join and listen to it. I think you might smile a lot because you've heard and thought of everything he's saying. But it's a new language to the hockey world out there, and it's one that has alienated us over the years. So I think, Gene, you should write that down because he's in the business of that concept, and really promoting it well. He provides excellent videos to support it. Talks about whistleless practices and all those kinds of things. So, Dean, how did you meet John? And do you remember the first time, or was it just like in the rink, period?
Our first date. I distinctly remember it, Wally, because Julie Healy had asked me to coach with her at U of C with the women's team, and I think John's identified the date. It was around 2003, and I had met a bunch of the players that summer at a triathlon out in Chestermere, and I'd overheard them talking, and I saw some U of C Dino apparel on them, and we struck up a conversation, and they said, geez, we really need a coach. We've got one, but we're trying to recruit people because she doesn't want to do it. And I found out, so I contacted Julie and said, I'd be interested. I've never coached female hockey before. And, sure enough, I started to help out. Our first practice that year in September, once the semester started, we were saddled with early morning practices because we were female hockey, and therefore we were third-class citizens. So we were at the Oval Monday to Wednesday. We were there at 6 a.m. and we were on the ice before 7. And for those of you that know the Oval, there's a long walk, and you got to go downstairs and underneath all the pipes and the speed skating track, and you pop up in the middle. We were on the South Rink. So we trooped down to the South Rink, and it's me, Julie, another assistant by the name of Doreen Sheets, who I'd met in the Kootenays years ago. And we're at practice, and I noticed there's this guy sitting up in the stands watching. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd. It's, not even 7 a.m. There's some guy up there watching. Anyway, we go through practice, and I don't know if that's normal or not. It's my first practice. And I go over to Julie toward the end of practice, and I say, who's this guy watching? Like, is this a parent, or, who is this? And she goes, well, his name's John, and he started watching a while ago, like last year. And he came to talk to me. He wanted to be an assistant coach. He presented me with his bio, but I'm just not too sure. And anyway, so practice finished, and he was up in the stands, and I don't think I talked to him that first day, but I noticed him, and then he was there on the Tuesday, and then he was there on the Wednesday, and I'm going, this guy, for a guy to show up at a practice that early in the morning with no apparent tangible reward that I could determine. And I was starting to get to know Julie and Doreen and the team. And I went to Julie during practice, and I said, why don't we talk to this guy again and see if he wants to get involved? Like, I don't know in what capacity, but let's talk to him. And she goes, if you want to talk to him, go ahead. And if he wants to come in, talk to him a little bit, come talk to me, and we'll make a decision. So I went up to John, I introduced myself, I think. And like I say, I think it was after that third practice. And, we started to chat, and I said, yeah, let's have you come on out, and really got to know him better after that, because he wasn't just sitting up in the stands watching us anymore.
Well, Dean, I want to mention we've had Kim McCullough, and Rick Puttock. And Sammy Joe Small has just joined as well. We're just talking about how we met John years ago over the years. He's been in more hockey rinks studying and watching different teams practice and than anybody I know since. And we were talking just now, Dean, that would have been, in the early 2000s that John was there. You didn't know who he was, and he's a soccer guy. So he has a lot to offer the game, us as coaches, not just hockey coaches. But John, I just have to mention that when I heard from my daughter and son-in-law that you were working with Vanessa and the University of Manitoba Bison soccer team and running practices for her, which is your wheelhouse, I was so thankful because I know what page you're on. I know you do stuff for the right reason, for the good of the game, but you do the X's and O's better than anybody. It's not deliberate. It's not do this, do that. It just allows for the inspiration of creative play. And I know all coaches are told about that, but with your presence and Vanessa, with her high level of certification and education, a doctorate in sports psychology plus coaching, to bring you on, I said, boy, am I happy my granddaughter is playing for her. So everybody here should have a pretty good idea of John's background. And John, the thing I didn't realize when I read your bio, and if I don't know if the people have, but I didn't realize that you were into the sort of the good of the game and the mission of doing what you do for the right reason and developing the characteristics of a good person as they play a sport. And that's why I created the Sharks. A lot of the X's and O's can come out of it, but most of it is teaching ethical coaching behaviors and getting parents to agree and understand, not letting the outcomes distract them from the process of achieving the outcome. So I'm just going to ask if there's new people on, John, and I do want you to know them, and I do hope you join again and sit into this group. I'm going to ask Rick Puddock, and then I'll go through the list. So very quickly, Rick, Kim, Sammy, and Peter that have joined, just a quick word about yourselves. And if you'd missed the introductory part about John, we'll make sure when I send out the whole recorded version, you listen to it. We're just about 20 minutes in right now. So, okay, Rick, please.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, John. Nice to meet you.
Morning.
I've been a minor hockey coach for the most part for better than 40 years now. Worked at the midget AAA level is my highest involvement. Haven't been actively coaching over the last few years, but mentoring minor hockey coaches, hopefully to a positive situation. This year I'm getting back active again. I'm just about to start the season with a new junior club that's formed locally, so back active.
Okay. Kim, please.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, John. Nice to meet you. I'm Kim.
Hi.
I'm in Toronto.
Great.
I run my own business called Total Female Hockey. So I only coach girls, and that's all I've coached for 15 years. I've coached at the provincial and national level. I just finished 12 hours on the ice yesterday, so my voice is extra low. It's a busy week with training camps, but when I saw your bio, I thought I definitely need to jump on this call. And I'm the director of player and coach development with the Toronto Leaside Girls Hockey Association, which is the biggest one in the world.
Wow.
So doing a lot of trying to get 50 plus teams on the same page and the coaching's sort of aligned and moving in the right direction. So that's what I'm doing here in Toronto.
Sammy Joe.
Kim scored lots of goals on me over the years, and I was a goaltender. I'm from Winnipeg. John, I'm assuming you're in Winnipeg if you're working with the University of Manitoba, or you're in Calgary?
I'm in Vancouver right now.
Oh, you're in Vancouver. Okay.
Yeah.
So originally from Winnipeg, I live in Toronto. I was a 3-time Olympic goaltender and just recently lost one of my jobs as the president of the Toronto Six in the Premier Hockey Federation. But moving on, I also work as an analyst for TSN And what else do I do? A minor hockey coach. I coach U9 girls and run a hockey school too.
Just to give you a little feedback, Sammy and Kim, I certainly saw you guys on the ice along the way. I know Sammy you were preparing for Nagano, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so I was in the stand watching you. I have a nice article about myself, the spy from United States. So I should send it to Wally. Yeah, it was the funniest thing
that's
ever.
fun.
But,
well, you probably seen Kim score lots of goals on me over the years.
Well,
so.
I follow the national teams from 1996 when I came to Calgary because you had your training center here. That was the purpose. But I ended up watching the women's teams every time because the men's always were there. So yeah, I saw you guys for sure. And
that's amazing. That's where I first met Wally also, and was lucky enough to come into his presence. Yeah, so that's it.
Fantastic.
Okay, Peter Whitney. There he is.
Yes, sir. I'm driving, so I apologize for no eye contact, but at this moment that seems prudent. I just retired from coaching NCAA hockey. I also coach ACHA, which is club hockey, prep school hockey. I coached girls high school hockey, different levels of minor hockey. Worked for USA Hockey in the coaching education program, scouted in the United States Hockey League for junior programs. Also did a little bit of scouting at the pro level. And Wally,
you must be out of
the
that
local minor hockey organization. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. I'm going through the what are the backwoods of Connecticut. But if you hear me,
we do now.
I just I just sealed the deal with that minor hockey organization that we were talking about.
Okay, Peter. He may be out of cell range, but John, as you know, everybody here is here to learn, share their ideas, and then I distribute whatever I can to a group of about 600 hockey crazy coaches and leaders to hope they pay it forward and pass it on for the good of the game. And I want to get into the nit and grit of what you and Dean and I think Tom and myself am just basically getting my feet wet to dare to just play games, small area games, half ice, whole ice, varieties of games, and stop those flow drills and teaching stations and repetition and correction. So that's what I want to get into is you were doing this since the get-go. Dean, were you doing that, the games idea, when you worked with Julie in the 2000s, or did you pick it up from John? Dean, would you elaborate on that? Because you're doing a doc now.
Yes, I was a typical traditional skill and drill coach when I started back in the mid 80s, early 80s, and was frustrated with what I felt was the middle part of the bell curve for the most part when it comes to measuring performance through results at AA, AAA level and into junior, and was searching for the holy grail. How could I help my teams become better? Yeah. And the metric I was really focusing on in my early days was winning, because I wanted to climb that ladder. And very frustrated, tried everything, went everywhere, attended symposiums. I met John that year I was with Julie at U of C in, I guess, 2003. And after that year, Julie stepped down and I took over. And it was essentially John and myself for the next couple of years. And we had Josh Dixon came in one year, Janelle Bodie came in one year as assistants. And John really, he subtly and directly greatly influenced my thinking around the games model. Prior to that, I had met Tom Malloy at a Hockey Alberta facilitators training session in downtown Calgary. And Tom, I can't remember the year. I don't know if he's still on now, but that was in the early 90s. And Tom and I struck up, I think that was the first time I had met Tom, and we struck up a couple of conversations over coffee. And he was sharing the genesis of his hockey coaching ABCs stuff before he even wrote it. And I think Tom put his first edition out in 98, and he gave me a signed copy. I've still got it like John does. And, I think, Wally, there was I was open to a lot of different influences. And I think on the game-based model, Tom was probably one of the first that was starting to put some of the stuff out that I knew, because we had no internet at this time, right? It was all face-to-face or seminar or course-based. Remember the old drill of the month on the faxes? We'd send faxes out. And, and then when I met John, that daily presence of his observation skills and commentary and his questioning approach. John was never in your face and saying, Dean, you're full of crap. This doesn't work. You need to change. You're so antiquated, and I think the beauty of that is that he was a multi-sport guy. He had both soccer and hockey background already. And I don't want to speak for John, but I know he kind of went through a similar evolution of skill and drill, experiencing frustration at the results, and then starting to ask himself, why is this not better? So I really appreciated that chance encounter with the stranger observing in the stands, because John and I, we're best friends, and we've worked together ever since that year. And we continue to push and challenge each other on the boundaries of using the game-based approach.
Well, Dean, I'd like to share a story, my story at the Oval, coaching the Oval team for Shannon Miller while she was centralized. Joan Vickers was Dr. Vickers, a professor, and she had her class observe a practice. And I ran what I thought at the time was a perfect practice. I got called into the Oval director's office about my ice time, which he said, according to Joan's class and the evaluation, was needed some work. And I was taken aback because I ran a typical deliberate pass here, shoot here, key teaching points constantly being reinforced. And the gist of it was, coming from Joan to the person that hired me, was that everything was no decision making. They were doing everything at executing the skill in the drill at the moments, and I was giving them feedback, positive feedback on it, trying to teach it, and it was typical. So I learned about the inquiry method of coaching. I realized games, letting them play and figure things out, was going to be part of solution. And boy, I had an earlier lesson when I first started coaching hockey, and I've told it too many times, about Ken Bracco asking me to coach Bantam AA, and I ran deliberate practices to the point of taking the most talented Pee-wee age players. I had them in 4th place, but after talking to Ken on the idea of letting them play games, small area games, we did win the ESO Minor Hockey Week City Championship and the Provincials. So that story really resonates with me. So, John, the work you're doing, which is something we're really familiar with as a group. I wonder if you can give me your take on where you think we're at right now. Sports are at. Has it gotten better? Have you watched hockey? Has it changed at all? Go ahead, John.
Well, I believe over the years, what I've been observing is it's been a change, and I think we're more aware. Everyone who have played the game, who have watched the game, who have teach the game, have become more aware of the possibilities of, doing things in a different way. And I think people is searching for those solutions, and I think that's the beauty of it. It's a lot of sharing, like your group, and I've been following you guys, observing your comments and listen to your YouTube, and I think it's great. I think we are looking for things. So now, from that, I think it is a space that needs to be filled. Is how we apply these ideas and how we explore these concepts and we put them in practice. I think that's where we need to start getting more involved in exploring. When I do coaching clinics and we share ideas with the coaches, one of the things we really talk about is don't be afraid to go there and explore and let the game be the teacher in a way, because you need to control certain parameters. You need to be there structuring these games so in a way they can become learning tools. And I think that's where we need to be more efficient at doing it. And I think everybody go through a process. I honestly, I started like every coach. I was looking for solutions. I follow everyone, professional teams, everyone, and I observe. And then I got my kids, junior, when they were young, and I try, when you coach youth kids, 7, 8 years old, 5, I say, how are we going to do this? And that drove me to start designing games. And that's what I think is the most critical part is to start designing them and put them in practice. I follow when I came to Calgary, I follow the symposiums like Dean say, and everybody goes for the drill book. Hey, what is the drill book? I need the drill book. And I tell you, I had a collection of drill books. And now with the advent of internet, you have access to millions of drills and stuff like that. But my question was always how I can do better and how I can design something that where my kids can become more creative, can really express themselves on their own, not me telling them what to do. You got to do this, you got to do that, especially when they're young, because that's when I think creativity is really, really flourish and really becomes the essence of, I think, game intelligence or sense. And I think we need to be very careful. But I think it's been an immense progress in the United States with the model of training, game model that they have designed, game, small area games and all that. But I think it's always place for more and to keep, pushing that boundary of how can we do better every day and how we can do, on the girls side, I've been coaching women for a long time and girls. Basically, I got a team now in Vancouver in soccer. They gave me a U17 girls team for a year because they finish next year. But me and my son here have taken the team, and it's BCSPL is like the top here in BC, and we're very excited. And again, it's not because they're 17 they're the best. They are at the best level, but I think it's a matter of how we can make them better. How can we promote and these players to better understanding of the game and so on. So yeah, no, to go back to your question, yeah, I think it's definitely a huge space here for progression, and yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna bring up a point related to that, and then I'll ask anyone else if you have any questions. And Dean, I think I do know that your research that you've been spending years on and finally completing your doctorate on this topic, the measure of coaches' success are outcomes. And so when I watch teams that win games, they play their best. They may not be the smartest teams, but they might be the hardest working teams that play together and bring energy. But I really believe that the NHL is sort of the model of the best performance. And that means that's what people look at. And they maybe try to emulate that in minor hockey when they don't have the skills or understanding of the tactics to teach it. So that's where I think the vacuum comes between daring to take risks about letting the game teach and coaching the way we've always coached, was it's traditional. And I think what's happening in the NHL is that coaches, they allow their assistants to run more of the practices. The practices are very tactically game related at the NHL level. And the coach is basically an observer, observing what everything's doing and asking the players, learning from the players about what should we do moving forward. So I think they're getting it at the highest levels. But as far as minor sports go, I'm not so sure. So I don't know whether, Kim, in your observation, this makes sense at all, but I wonder if you could comment, Kim, on that.
Yeah, I think even with minor hockey coaches, they tend to drift towards what they're comfortable with, which, we all played in an era where it was mostly flow drills and systems, right? So, 20 years ago when I was playing minor, okay, it's 30 years ago now. I lied. The drills look very different. Now, then I had Dave McMaster as my coach, who I think many people on this call would know. So that was a bit of a gift, and it certainly wasn't system based in the way that he coached. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Dave coached University of Toronto men's and women's teams forever, and then coached with the national team in '90 when they wore the pink and white jerseys. And then we were fortunate enough to have him at Leaside for a number of years when I was playing. And his practices were a little bit more skill based and then game based. So it wasn't a lot of standing around pass here. It was a little bit more being creative. So maybe he was before his time. But even now, I'm running a lot of teams' training camps this week. And there are a lot of other teams running their training camps on the other pads around us. And I would say, for the most part, our younger coaches, so at the U13, U11, and I coach the U9 teams, it's very much skill, concept, small area games. There still seems to be a bit of desire or want or nervousness at the U15 and U18 to get into the systems right away. So I think that, it's maybe more born of the fact that these coaches have coached a little longer. They think they have some secret sauce or some secret power play that's going to be the difference maker. So even with the teams I'm running this week that are U15 and U18, a few of them have said, could we have the last 30 minutes to work on team stuff? Which I sort of think of course, you're paying for it. But, I think, working on breakouts by, working on breaking pressure one-on-one and skating it out yourself it's still a breakout drill. You can call it a breakout drill without having the players just stand on the wall. So, I'm biased, obviously, with our organization in trying to change people's minds about just teaching skills and systems and the concept bridge that comes in between. But watching the boys, training camps that were going along around us, there was a lot of, hard skating, up and back, that sort of thing. A lot of flow, which is always really exciting to watch when they haven't been on the ice and they can't pass, because that's, of course, the number one thing that goes when you haven't played for a while. So flow drills are especially exciting to watch at the end of August. So I don't know. And again, that's just a small subset. And obviously training camp is an exciting and scary time, I think, for coaches, because they think they know what they have and they don't know what everybody knows. But based on what I saw, there's still coaches who are, I saw a team doing their ozone attack with 5 players and the coach saying, now you pass here, and then you pass here, and then you pass here. So I'm not sure how much we've changed, but, there's still, people watch the Leafs here and go, oh, like, let's run a 1-3-1 power play, or, whatever it is, because that's what they see on TV, without knowing that their players don't have the skill, the hockey IQ, the conceptual knowledge of the game to be able to execute that. And certainly, as John knows with the girls, if you tell them to stand exactly there, then of course they're always going to stand exactly there because they're lovely and they want to do it right. And then the puck's 10 feet away and they don't chase after it. So because I only work with girls, I err completely on the side of like no structure. There's no X's of stand here and do this. And try to make them think a little bit more. So I think that's a solution that's even better in the female game because of their want to be coach pleasers and do the right thing. I think we have to try even harder to make them creative and not script hockey for them. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, Kim. And Dean, I know that you had me come out. You were coaching I believe it was a U15 team. Might have been older, but and you were quite frustrated with your coaching staff because the methodology you was using wasn't something they understood or appreciated. So there's a degree of comfort here, and I'm finding that's the biggest challenge, Dean, when I mentor girls hockey. Tom does things the right way. There's a comfort with the way he's doing things, and it's getting success. But a few of the coaches are doing things in a traditional way, and there's nothing wrong with it. And they're very good bench coaches and extremely good motivators, and they treat the kids well. They're going to be successful on the score clock using what they've done. I'm just trying to look at different ways of doing things and developing smarter hockey players, because as Tom knows, in the female side last year, when he introduced the counting of passes to his team, they became conscious and aware of it, and they passed better. I don't know what you did. I don't think you did deliberate passing. You just done a lot of smaller games against rates, and they learned to pass, and you got the results. So the ability to teach the passing and the support and the timing with constraints in the games, Tom's mastered.
Well, I think, Wally, can I just interject here?
Please do.
Yeah, I don't think you can throw out the baby with the bathwater. I really like putting players together and working on the skills, so they have the proper technique and they're holding their stick right, and and they're not just slapping the puck, which is the most common thing, in youth hockey, and then put that into a game. I just posted a King's Court tournament on my Facebook hockey page, and every game you keep on having modified rules for the games, and then the winners move towards one way and the ones that lost move the other way. But before we do that, we'd work on some sort of a skill. It could be there can only be wrist passes, or maybe goals only count on given goals, stuff like that. So I don't think that we have this innately all inside of us, and it's just to bring it out. We have to do some direct teaching too, and then put the things into various games. And also, you know, I'll just leave it right there. But anyway, I want to make that point.
Tom, in relation to that, what was you said about the baby in the bathwater?
Well, I think we tend to go, okay, we're going to go all games. It's like in education. We weren't having kids write, and, you know, we were focused on spelling and, you know, underlined subject, predicate, noun, verb, when I took English and all this, and we didn't write very much. And they went through a stage that they threw all that out, and kids are writing, but they can't spell, you know, and the sentence structure was awful. And I think you have to do fundamental skills along with the other part. You can't just assume that they're going to know all this stuff without, you know, actually teaching. You can't have a kid playing hockey their whole life with their top hand, excuse me, their thumb pointing up in the air with their top hand. You have to correct that, or they'll never be any good, because, you know, mechanically you can't do things. So I don't think we can throw the instruction out, but we just have to, you know, it didn't used to be any games. Like when I played hockey, basically it was all outdoors in the Stone Age, and our practice was warm up the goalie, do a few breakouts, and then we had controlled scrimmage where we froze where we were when the coach blew the whistle. You know, you talk about team play, and then we do some fitness skating. That was practice forever, you know, and then we saw the Russians and all that in '72, and everybody went crazy with drills, but they didn't pay attention that half the Russian practice was games. We just saw these drills. We'd never seen these flow drills and all this before. We just went crazy with flow drills and threw the game right out. And anybody that used it was way behind the times. And, you know, and now I think we can't just go to games and leave out the, you know, the technical part, because it's really important. So,
Tom, I'm sitting here embarrassed because I was one of those who would blow the whistle and shout, "Freeze!" And I'd point out where they were lost in the shape of their structure. They hadn't figured it out because I didn't let them to. So what happened is they weren't thinking for themselves. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I ran hockey schools where I taught those skills, like for 10, 12 years, from 6-year-olds right on up to working with pros, where I didn't worry about skills, but we had competitive games. There were a few tactical skills they had to learn, especially if they played defensively, and working with the national team, I did do those with them. But when I was asked to coach that Bantam AA team with all of my knowledge, and I inherited the team, 2 teams that played in the city final, I picked the best of the litter, and was in 4th place. The previous coach just played games. He had 90 games. He very few practices. The reason he did that is he got hit in the head with a puck early in the year, and he asked the kids if they are in practice, and of course they said not really, and so he just played games, and he reinforced. He demanded 2 things: effort and respect, and he praised them. Good job, boys! Way to go! Way to go! And they won the cities.
but you know what, Wally? In that era, all the research on the efficiency of practice, and I've done this, just videotape one kid. In a drills-based practice, you move between 7 and 11 minutes in an hour, and you stand there, you know, between 53 minutes in a drills-based practice. And people say, oh, we need 2 practices for every game. Well, the game, a kid was moving more in a game if there's 3 lines. You know, the kid's moving 20 minutes in a game if there's 3 lines stop time. You know, much more than they would in a practice. So when Ken Bracco had games all the time and he didn't run very good practices, it was better for him to play games. You know, so the secret sauce is to run practices that are efficient. And, you know, you're only standing in line for a rest, not because it's a terrible plan, you know, and, you know, so I think practices have changed a lot since, you know, the 70s or whatever you're talking about. I think probably the 70s.
Yep. Tom, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Dean, sitting back and thinking, Dean, you're doing research on this. You've studied it. You're aware of it, and are able to express it in an academic way where it scientifically it just speaks to what it's worth. It's valuable. So, Dean, any comments on this dilemma of coaches who aren't as educated as us and experienced as us? They haven't made as many mistakes as us growing up. And I think, like I said before, the Sharks are, the older you go, the more you don't know. You realize how much there is to learn. So, Dean, I wonder if you can comment, and we can tie back into your research a bit and maybe the work John's doing. And John, if you have anything on your mind that sort of connects with what we're saying, we'd sure love to have you speak to it. Dean first.
I think Tom brings up an interesting point, and he really put the practices that Ken Bracco was running back in the 70s and that you were commenting on into perspective. And I think that's a really important thing here. You know, I started on the outdoor ice as well, Wally, and I didn't move indoors until the Pee Wee era. And the practice that you described, you know, that was our typical minor hockey practice where there's a lot of skill and technique and standing around. If we were lucky, we got to a controlled scrimmage with lots of fitness skating. You know, we used to, based on your hockey schools back in the day, Wally, we used to call them Wallies when we had to skate back and forth across the ice. So for whatever it's worth, I did curse you a lot of times whenever other coaches adopted your infamous Wallies over and backs. You know, geez. Anyway, but I like what Tom said there about the research data. And George Kingston had he was my first exposure, and he took a sabbatical in the early 70s, I think twice, to study minor hockey and to study statistics and metrics like you know, puck time on the stick and possession and these things. And he looked at various countries and development systems. And in the 70s, and I would argue even up till today, but it was probably more prevalent back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and starting to become less so today. The amount of standing around time still is, you know, a significant piece in minor hockey. And I think Tom's right. Like, and I'd never thought of it this way before. Even though if you're running a typical practice, which means the coach is going to do a lot of talking and the kids are going to do a lot of standing, and the activity time and time on task are going to be a lot shorter when you try to do a deliberate directed practice, just because of the nature of direct teaching. The benefits that you're going to get by playing in a scrimmage, even if you're not teaching, when you put that beside a typical directed practice, even if the coach doesn't know the game and doesn't teach and just scrimmages, I think the benefits for the kids are going to be much greater because they're actually figuring stuff out on their own. And the game will become a teacher of sorts. John had made a comment earlier on I don't know if I wrote it down, so I don't know if I'm going to get it right, but he said something, and I mean, we've heard it, and I think Tom talks about it in his book, the game is the best teacher of the game, but that doesn't mean we're letting the coaches off the hook and we're just going to shut up and stand back and let them play with no rules of engagement, no purpose, no intention behind our scrimmage. I think that's how today's best coaches are employing the small area games. They're putting some constraints in, and then they shut up and they get back and they let the kids figure it out. So I think that was a very good point that you made, Tom, about understanding the times, understanding the context, and then looking at these metrics from an efficiency point of view. But then aside from efficiency, we also have effectiveness. And so we can scrimmage all the time, but if we don't put in constraints and rules of engagement and do it purposefully and have accountability and know what metrics we're looking for, I think it's still better than the old school skill and drill, stand around and be active. What did Tom say? Like 53 minutes of a practice could be standing in 60. I did a time motion analysis for Dr. Steve Norris when his son Sam was playing Pee Wee in Cochrane. Steve brought me out because I'd worked with Joan Vickers for a few years back in the day, Wally, and was exposed. That was my first exposure to decision training. And I ended up being a research assistant with her. We published a paper. It took 10 years to get published. But with Steve's son's Pee Wee team, they had full ice. I think they had 13 skaters, if memory serves. And I had a couple of stopwatches, and I was watching Sam, and I kept track of how often was he moving and how often did he have the puck. And then I knew it was a 90-minute practice. I'm going, oh my God, out here in Cochrane, they're so spoiled at Pee Wee. They've got a full ice practice, 90 minutes. They had 2 coaches. And again, I'm going off of memory here, but if I can recall, I believe in that 90 minutes, Sam was active for maybe 14. 14 minutes out of 90. Like, Tom, that's even worse than your 1 hour practice when you put it into perspective. And then I looked at how much time did he have the puck, or was he directly involved in the play? And it dropped down to just over a minute. I know there's data out there on the 98 Nagano, the Salt Lake, the 2002 Salt Lake Olympics. USA Hockey did a study, and I think they watched both the men's and the women's. I can't remember all the data off the top of my head, but I think they said in the gold medal game, Joe Sakic had the puck on his stick for a little over a minute. I think they measured her. She was like 48 seconds. And at the time, those were 2 of the top players in their respective sports at the highest level of performance-oriented competition in a full 60-minute game. And Wally, you had commented earlier about the NHL kind of being the model and the progress. I'm going to be a disruptor here, and I'm going to challenge that. John and I have been to NHL practices for too long. I quit going because I was disappointed, and I just didn't see the progress. I felt it was a waste of my time. John kept going. He's the observer, and I've seen all teams practice from the 90s up to the, I would say, 2010-ish era, and then I gave up. And I saw a copycat league. I saw no innovation. I saw standing around. I saw flow drills. I saw inefficiency. I saw whistle control. I could go on, but I feel they're a terrible model for minor hockey.
Yeah, well, just hold it, Dean. You said 2010. That was the last time to watch. And I know Tom and I have sat together. Can you turn your speaker off a bit? I'm getting echo. Yeah. Good. I think it may have been true in 2010. I agree with you, but in the last 6 to 10 years, the practices have been tactically decision-making oriented, but the situation that they start the activity out with is specific to applying to a game situation, which is going to happen, and then execution of the skill in a competitive one-on-one setting. So, Tom, I don't know if you can mention, we watched the under 18 team that 1 year practice. It was the best practice I've ever watched. They were game-like, tactically purposeful, high tempo. They just weren't free play. I was impressed with the tactical execution of those skills at a high competitive level. And when they played in the championships, they won. So I think the balance of that thinking being built into the deliberate part of the initiation of a drill, early in the drill, and creating it competitively, I think their practices, that's what we've got. They're the model. They're what people watch on TV and are going to emulate and admire. So, Tom, can you mention what's your thoughts on that?
Well, like you, I go and watch all those teams. They didn't seem to have very many at Winsport this year, but practices have improved really, really way better. But then it also depends who the coach is. You know, like my opinion, Mike Babcock runs the best practices. He does, you know, skill stuff, tactical stuff, and he's one of the only guys that uses transition games, which I think are, I think transition games are the most important thing, because a game is a game of transition. Each team gets a puck between 3 and 4 times each minute, 180 to 200 times a game. And if you just practice one-on-ones or two-on-ones and you blow a whistle and it's over, well, that's not hockey, because you got to get the puck and, you know, make that pass, the breakout and all this. Or that's what hockey is. It's just not doing thing forever. But I think the practices have overall really improved compared to what they used to be. But again, it depends on the coach. So.
Yeah, Tom, in relation to that, Darryl Belfry commented he had, I think, 6 of his superstars out there, like Crosby, Matthews, Marner, and they had some other, I think, American League players, and they were playing a game of keep away in a small area. And they were teaching Darryl about what he wouldn't teach, which was pass to a space the player can skate onto in a small area. They were worried about direct eye contact passing. So he let them play the game of keep away and said the best players pass to a space. And they support that space. They're not there and the pass made directly to an open player. And that's next level thinking. So he, in his small area games, tactically oriented with decision making, that's an example of playing 3 versus 3 keep away. And he learned from them pass to a space. And passing to space is a really popular tactic, even one-on-one. Don't try to deke, just pass to a space and get to the space away from the defender. So that's where, Dean, I'm saying the NHL is becoming the sort of the model of tactical ingenuity. And that's what I call that. I've never thought of passing to myself off a space on attack, but that's a new tactic. So that's where I'm saying that the people that are in the business of sport, having to be successful, having to win to keep their job and draw the audience, they're under pressure to stay ahead of the tactical nuances of the game. And I think we're learning from what they do. And when I work with the elite coaches, for instance, I'm talking about surfing, not skating backwards anymore, but the tactic of surfing, which you can teach and incorporate into games. So I don't know, Dean, if that provides any sense of balance to what you were saying or not, but go ahead, Dean, if you've got anything else to add. I do want to ask, I'm just going to give Rick, Sam, and Peter a heads up here, sitting back with your different backgrounds in terms of what you're taking away or appreciating from this. But Dean, go ahead.
Let's not forget about Hal too. He's been here. The whole
Okay, you're right. Sorry, Hal. Dean?
Yeah, thanks, Wally. Yeah, I mean, I did watch some of the practices into after 2010, but it became more limited based on my schedule and my disappointment. And since COVID, I haven't even bothered to try to go down to watch anything. Just, you know, the NHL changed a lot of their policies around allowing people in with, you know, security things and that sort of thing for practice. So it became practices. I didn't find the practices were as open to be able to get in. And I don't know if that's still the case or not, but I know there's been more of an emphasis on skill coaches and, you know, with analytics being brought in, they have more metrics. Nobody, I have not had the chance to speak with anybody who works as a analytic person. It's all very clandestine. Nobody wants to share any information. It's a, you know, a performance-based world, I understand. I would really like to understand more around some of the analytics to see what they're looking for. And I want to see if there is any relationship whatsoever from the analytics staff to the coaching staff, and understand how they use that flow of information, or if they use that flow of information. What are the most common things and metrics that they're looking for, and do coaches actually incorporate data into their practice? And I don't know if all that data is relevant, or there's a lot of stuff out there, and I don't profess to understand all of it. I like the comment that Tom made on the transition being, you know, I think John would attest to this, and he always was whispering this in my ear. Transition is the most important principle in hockey. And when we add whistles and the coach uses his whistle or her whistle to start and stop a drill, they're basically neutering that transition from their practice. And they need to let it occur naturally. And when there's a poor pass, or the player can't receive a pass and it bounces over their stick, don't make it easy and throw a second puck in. Don't let them go get a second puck. There shouldn't be any other pucks out there. Have them chase down that puck. Have them complete the play. Have them make chicken salad out of chicken poop, right? Like, they've got to figure that out, because that's what happens in a game. And every transition moment is a decision-making moment. And it's important for these kids to become independent, creative thinkers and figure out how to solve the problems within the parameter of that game environment, because that's what they do in a real game. The coach can yell and shout from the bench. He can whisper in their ears. He can yell at them, whatever. It's not right. But that now is sometimes now that feedback encourages dependent thinking a lot of times. Instead of telling and directing, I think that the coaches should move toward more of a questioning approach, a Socratic questioning approach. What did you see out there? What do you think of the play you made? Why did you make that play? If you had a time machine, could you go back in that same moment, would you do the same thing after you saw what the outcome was of the choice you made? And you can script a bunch of these things in advance, or, you know, and become proficient enough to do it as the play unfolds. The people come back to the bench, you can talk to your players. And when I say talk to, I basically mean question, shut up, listen, and see what they say and what they hear. Because we all have different backgrounds. We're all older than 13 or 18 or 9, like most of the kids that we're working with. We have developed into adults with certain perceptions and different lenses that we see the game. We're seeing it through our first person eyes, elevated on a bench with no fear of being bumped into, or you know, we're not immediately in the play. We're almost a third person point of view to the player's first person point of view. What I see doesn't matter really, because my reality is different from that kid's reality. I still have my coaching wisdom that I can employ through the questioning when they come back to help guide them. But I think that that's a better way than directing. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that we can go with this. I don't know how much you guys, like Wally, I know you've gone down to Toronto. I don't know how much direct impact, like if Toronto was on the road and they came to practice in Calgary and I was able to go watch, I don't know. My perception is that a lot of these skill coaches, there are times where they get the players, maybe they do 10, 20 minutes before practice. Maybe they do 10, 20 minutes after practice. Maybe they have a separate ice time. But the practices that I see typically when teams are on the road, you know, there's a difference between a game day skate, which is very much routine, patterned, ritualistic. The purpose for that is to let the players feel good about themselves. I think they're trying to minimize decisions and change and chaos to try to build their confidence. And I don't know if that's really, I would have to research that, but I don't know if that's the best way to prepare for a chaotic competitive game.
Dean, I agree with you, but also, if you could just turn your speaker off, good. I agree with you. The idea of chaos is good. Chaos is really good because they are thinking and figuring it out. And I don't think NHL practices are as chaotic as you might desire, but there is decision making built into them relative to the tactic you need to have, an awareness you need to have of your positioning to the game situation. So in keeping with what you said, Dean, and I'm going to go to the other people who haven't had a chance to speak yet, I was observing U13 tryouts yesterday, or pardon me, it was at a coaching summit for U13 and older of community hockey coaches, 80 coaches in the audience. And Sam Holmes is running her session on bench management. And we got talking about coaches shouting from the bench, playing the game out loud, telling their players what to do. And we realize at that level, what's the right thing is to be loud enough for the players on the bench to hear, and don't be negative, to identify the good things that are going on that you need to get happening in a game. So the work we do, I'm doing, is practical to that coach, that team, this group, to educate them. Raising your voice on the bench and playing the game out loud, you're not really teaching. You might be interrupting their thinking and distracting it. But what they see at times is correct because they see the game. So that's the one thing that I think the line I have for the art of coaching is the right stuff, right amount, right time. And how do you do that? Well, that's what coaches have to figure out, and the best ones do the right things. So they figure it out. Hal, can you comment anything on what all this gabbing that's been going on?
It's a lot of gabbing. You know, like you all, I've been doing this for 5 decades in a wide variety of levels. And in the youth, you know, I've always said that what the NHL does, the colleges do, and then of course the high school coaches think they should do it, or the junior. I mean, but you're dealing with totally different types of players with different developmental levels in their lives, and I 100% agree with this. You know, the game, the small area games, and we've been using those the last several years. Actually, I did some as a result of our conversations over the last maybe 2 years. I actually put a stopwatch to some teams to see how effective their practices were. And the team I'm taking over last year, I stopwatched their best player a couple practices, and she was averaging 8 minutes per hour of actually what I would call sort of useful time, which means she wasn't standing in line. She might have been skating around and involved in some sort of a drill. You know, the crux of the issue is we have amateur coaches in the youth environment who only stay for an average of 4 to 6 years because they're there with their kids. And they all do the coach education programs. You have it in Canada, we have it here in the United States. And that has turned into, at least in the United States, that's turned into a huge financial windfall for USA Hockey. I've been spending hours online watching videos that I'm now required to watch and pay for. And I think they're good, but you know, I know from my experience of having been involved in the coach education program at USA Hockey for 20 plus years, that what we presented to the coaches, and then I would see that I didn't see any change in behavior of coaches when I'd go to the rink. You know, they just go back and do the same stuff because they don't really know or understand how to do it better. And you know, I think that's a problem that is always going to exist. The other thing is that, you know, here we're in Minnesota. I mean, you know, 1 or 2% of the kids are going to go on and become elite hockey players. That's all. And you know, we've turned hockey into a sport that we think everybody should play hockey. And not everybody. I mean, I'm not saying everybody shouldn't play hockey, but they shouldn't play playing as a competitive at a high level or pretending that they're at that level. I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but you know, most of the kids just show up because they want to play. They just want to have fun. And when my son was playing junior hockey out on the East Coast in Boston, and the rink that he played in, that rink was a private rink. There were 1,200 kids playing in a league there, and those teams practiced once every 2 weeks, and they played 2 games a week, and none of them were members of USA Hockey, and none of them cared. They just wanted to come to the rink and play. So, and that's how the rink was able to, you know, be successful financially. So I think we tend to pigeonhole, you know, everybody wants to win, and you know, the B parents they think their kids got screwed and they should be on the A team, and the C level kids think they deserve the same resources that the top kids do. But then of course you give them the resources and they don't show up. Only half of them ever show up. So I know it, having many years ago when I was still pretty involved with USA Hockey, Minnesota Hockey, the model is get as many kids on the bell curve as possible. And, in the top 10, if you have 5 million kids playing, you get 10% come out. I got 500,000 kids playing in the United States. So you get 10% might be pretty darn good hockey players. But it's sort of the old, spaghetti theory, throw it up against the wall and see what sticks.
Hal, I'd like to get John back in the mix, and then I do want to hear from some of the others. You said the word explore. And I don't know if you recall the context you said it in, but John, we're sort of in the practical aspect of coaching effectiveness to get results. And you're able to apply the theory of thinking and improving thinking. John, can you comment on, and I'm just throwing the word explore out too, because you have observed more practices and more games than any of us in many different sports. So, John, would you comment, please?
Well, well, listening to everyone here, thank you. This is quite amazing. I love it because all the amazing experience that is here, and it's fantastic. So, just to go back a little bit here before I touch on exploration, when we talk about small area games or small games or game sense, we talk about the players just playing games, but I think the part of the exploration I did was to start playing with these, experimenting with these sort of numbers, and we go back, I talked to Dean about this a lot, is the primary task for the players is to learn 1 versus 1. So you start from there, right? So, and you start building up that sort of, I call it a Rubik cube, where the players become very good at 1-on-1. Then you expose them to 2-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-2, 3-on-3. And then finally for hockey will be 5-on-5. And soccer, you go to 11-11 eventually. Youth soccer now is 7-7, 6-6. But I found that if you explore and design these ideas as a coach, you expose the players to a better environments of performing. We talk about constraint lead approach, the performer, the environment, and the task that we give the player. So if we understand that relationship, I think we start getting a better view of what these players can achieve, and we open the door for the players to become better at understanding the game. Because I think the challenge we have is, we know the game, we understand the game, but it's not about us, it's about the kids, U8 or U10 or whatever. It doesn't matter how much you know, it doesn't matter where you play, it doesn't matter that I play soccer, hockey, it doesn't matter. What matters is what that kid, that young player is understanding, how he viewed the game, how he explored the game. I go back to that exposure of game play time is so important. And we just, we talk about transitions. I will add the concept of anticipation. How we teach this? Well, these concepts are very, very complex, and we can talk about transition, and we say, well, that kid doesn't understand. And I always say to Dean, well, when you say that, I'll ask you, coach, who's the problem here? Is that the kid or you? And I think we have to point to ourselves and be responsible, take responsibility, because if we cannot have a kid at 8 years old, 9, 10, do a nice transition, understanding anticipation, I think it's our fault. And I have tried this, I have experimented with my kids, and I tell you, it's amazing, because now they have understand the concept through their own experience, their own view, their own eyes, their own perception. As Dean said, they need to understand, not us. We We are the wisdom guys. But yes, how we transfer this knowledge. So when you explore this sort of game design and you start putting it in place for the players to experience that, that's what I think we start getting results and seeing it. I've seen it over the years. I've seen that happening, players becoming really creative, really attuned to the game at younger ages, U12, U13, and it's quite amazing to see. But again, I think we are the providers of that environment. We need to facilitate that, and I think that's the key for us. We're talking about all these, the problems we have in the coaching world that Hal just mentioned, and I agree with him 100%. A lot of parents are there just because my kid is here and they leave. But I think we're also responsible to create or to teach or to mentor the coaches who really love what they do and they're really here for a reason. We need to help them to get better at this. And sharing these ideas, I think, is the key now, is how we do this better. Is that just to play a game that is important, or do we need to understand what the purpose of this game is and how we apply this to the kids, the youth players? Because at the end of the day, that's what we do. We're teaching players. And I would say, just, when I work with national teams, and I've done it in soccer in Colombia, and I go do clinics, and national players or professional players are no different from kids. I always say, the pros are kids with a lot of money. That's the only difference I see. Otherwise, they're like anyone. They learn. I challenge people. Last time I was in Colombia in 2017, they invited me to this training session with one of the pro teams, and it was pretty interesting. And I say to the players, listen, you are living in a performance environment. You win or you lose. There's no great area here. You need to win. That's what you are getting paid for. So the session I designed for them that day was all competitive, and my God, the guys were like, "Holy shit, coach!" I said, "Listen, you think you're working hard? You are not even close to understand what working hard is. You play. This is my theory. Pros train really hard only when they play games. That's it. That's my observation after 40 years. And I can debate that anytime, but I will tell you one thing. What I've seen is pros only work at 100% or 120 when they are playing games at the pro level, or when they're playing a championship, the European Cup, or, all these Olympics. Talk about Olympics. That's when you get it. You really see the real competition, right? When you are exposed to that. In training, I think one of the big holes in training is, we're training hard, but I say, to rephrase the Spartans, they were the only, who say that? Heraclitus, a philosopher, said the Spartans were the only humans or that basically went to war to rest, because their training was so intense that they were so happy. We're going to war. We're going to have a break. And that's what they feared them so much, because they knew they were coming to destroy everything. So we need to take everything in perspective here when we talk about this exploration. I tell you one thing. Over the last 4 years, I've been trying a lot of stuff. With Dean, I had the opportunity. He opened the door. Him being now doing his research and his PhD have opened another door, that academic side that I think I was lacking, to be able to articulate better what I think, what I do. And I think it's been a fantastic journey. And then honesty, more like Wally said at the start, every day that I wake up, I don't know. I say, my God, I know so little, and I don't have time to learn so much that is out there. And the event of internet, have opened the world of knowledge to us. And we, honestly, I read, didn't have drilled me with all this research. And every day I read, it's like, my God, I know so little. And again, exploring for me becomes part of that. Is every time I talk to you guys now today, what a day. You learn something every time. And I think we need to become better at what we do, I think, and keep refining our skill. And I think everybody can attest to that. Every day we're learning. Whatever we coach U8s or professionals, I think.
Sammy, I am really curious because you've played, you've coached, you've managed. We've talked a lot of things here, and I'm really sorry Kim isn't on. And if she is, I'd like to get her take. But what do you take out of this all? We've sort of been all over the map with John. I think you can appreciate why he came on. The guy's studying, and he knows so much, and he's still doing it. And Sammy, please, if you would, and Kim next. But
yeah, Kim is still on, so she can comment next. You know what I'm taking out? I love this discussion. What I'm taking out of it is the growth mindset and the willingness to learn that coaches need throughout their careers, and that's why I appreciate this group so much. Is that the willingness to acknowledge that we're probably doing things wrong right now too, that we're going to acknowledge in 10 years that are not going right. But the athlete-centered focus, I love. And going back to Wally's philosophy of creating the citizen for, a greater good and a greater world, I think is so vital and so important. And we have, at times, a very short time frame with an athlete, and other times a longer time frame, but trying to impart as much as at that time, the best that you can do. I think that that's so key for coaches to remember, that it isn't about the score clock. It isn't about winning and losing. It's about that each athlete developing not only their body and their proprioception and everything that goes along with being a good athlete, but teaching them to learn so that when they are in real scenarios in real life, they have the capacity to make good decisions. So anyways, that's what I'm taking out of all of this. So loving it so far. Go ahead, Kim.
Thanks, Sammy. Yeah, I was thinking a lot. I just finished my 200th hour of being on the ice in the last 6 weeks, I think. And I've got about 5 more tonight, but, kind of reflecting a little bit about teaching players. And so I think like when the kids go to hockey camp or they're doing a skill practice, it's a mix of players. It's not their team. It's not their team head coach. I think that's a really safe place for them to develop, right? They're not worried about screwing up. Certainly in more competitive environments, they're not worried they're not going to get on the power play if they screw up a pass. Sometimes our team practices have, that stress element, certainly at the NHL level, if you're trying to crack the lineup and you're not doing so well in the team practice, that would have a big impact on your ability to play. So my thought actually this morning in advance of this call was, if a hockey camp or a skills session is safe and a place where you can fail, and the coach says, great job, do it again, try it again, right? You're not worried as much about, we got to get more reps in, or I got to move on to the power play drill. So you screwed it up. Bad job, Jimmy. Let's move on. How do you create that environment in a team setting, right? So I think that's what I'm sort of taking away from this, and in listening to everyone's amazing ideas, right? Maybe those small area games, or, something with more of those constraints where it's not you did the drill wrong or you went around the cone wrong, or, my daughter, still can't raise the puck consistently. And so every time we do a shooting drill, it's not necessarily the outcome she wants, but that's what I'm taking away, or the seed that I'm, I guess, planting here. How do we make those team practices safer, a safe place to fail, a safer place to learn, right? Wally was talking about yelling from the bench. We're puppeteers of the players. I do a little bit of that with our U9 players, but there's like four words total I say, and I just repeat them to try to kind of get some structure. But I think I've talked before on the call that they're not, telling them what to do. It's a little bit more high level than that, or structural than that. But that's what I'm taking away is that, I see now I'm coaching, John, I coach my daughter who's 7. So I'm coaching U9. I'll be helping with U7 this year because my other daughter is 5. There's no stress, even when they go to get, like, they just love it and they're just going. And, sometimes even the outcome doesn't really matter. It certainly matters to the parents and the other coaches. Absolutely. Even when it's half ice and no one's actually keeping score, although they're also keeping score. But for the players, they're not stressed necessarily about screwing up, except if they get a penalty and then they cry. If they have to go in the penalty box. I never experienced that before. I've never had a player cry when they got a penalty and continue to cry the rest of the game because they got a penalty. So that's my thought, is how do we make it safer to fail? And so that the players aren't worried that they're not going to get the opportunity or with the girls, and I hope coach midget and junior forever. Oh my God, I screwed up or I didn't score. The scouts are watching, all the big showcase tournaments are coming up here in the Toronto area in the next couple of weeks. The amount of stress that these players have about, the number of scouts that will be in the stands, which will be in, the 50 to 100, probably at every single game, right? How are they approaching mentally, the idea of failure or the idea of development in those environments? So, it's as much about the physical drills as it is how we communicate and how we create those spaces for players. And I have to admit, I haven't watched a lot of pro practices other than, skill-based ones that are on the ice before me or after me in the summer. I'm not sure how you do that or how you cultivate that or when it switches for players, or if it's just the coach they have who's 100% outcome based who changes it for them. I think John's frantically putting up his hand like I do. Talk, so
I love it, Kim. I love it. You know what? When my kids were young, I started thinking how, like you say, how to create this safe environment for them. Because I saw too many yelling, too many swearing, too much of everything like that. And nowadays I have this theory, and I'm going to share with you today. So think about this. The game itself is a complex system, right? And like any complex system, it fluctuates every time and evolves under the steady pressure of failure, right? So everything that goes in the game is about failure, basically, because like a system, complex system, it happens. You play the game at the highest level, like Sam, everybody, we play the game somewhere. And everything evolves about failure. And that's what I think we need to understand, that in that failure, like in the system, it emerges, it's an emergence of beauty out there. These moments of beauty, Sam, a beautiful save, Kim going around 3 players. And this is what really we need to process. I don't care about the failures. I tell my players, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the emergence of beauty. I want you to create something beautiful every time. I talked to my kids when they were 8, 9, 10, and after that, I had the chance to have this beautiful group of 8 boys. The coach came and said, hey, I want my kid to train with you. I don't care how much you charge. Do you have 20 kids? They're yours. Oh my God. I was like, okay. The only condition, they do it my way. I tell you, it was an amazing experience for 5 years. What I told them was, here you are welcome to embrace failure, to embrace mistakes. I don't care. What I do care is that you make an effort to create beauty, to try things. And my God, honestly, I will tell you one thing, Kim, when you give that confidence or that you set up that environment for the kids, it's magical. It's magical. I've seen it. I don't know what I can say. I can express it sometimes. I can taste it. I can feel it. I can breathe it. It's amazing. So Love it. I think we the masters, or whatever you want to call the person in charge of there who's controlling, we are the creators of that beauty if we want to set up the right way, or we are the destroyers of that beauty if you want to put it that way. Because we, not the kids. You know, I keep hearing this. He doesn't have an IQ. Oh, he's not smart. I say, well, who are you talking to? Because now you're talking to me. So maybe you need to talk to me because you have a problem. Your job is to create that beauty. It's not to, I would say, mistakes are there, yes. And don't get me wrong here. It's time for showing the picture. Hey, what do you think here? That wasn't the best option. Then they come up with that answer every time. Yes, coach. That wasn't good. Okay, good. What option else out there? Oh well, I could have passed here. I could have see this. I could have shoot to the top corner because she was on the ground. Because blah blah blah. Hey, my job is to create beauty. That's my job as a coach. So that's what I wanted to say, Kim, and I hope that helps a little bit. Thank you.
I guess my hands up. Must be my turn. Lots to go on here, folks. As John said, the game is, there are so many variables in the game that you couldn't possibly have 100% success. So failure has to be part of it. And in my opinion, there's probably more failures in any game than there are successes. One of the things I've done over the years with players that I've worked with is that if you're not making enough mistakes, I tell them you're not trying hard enough. If you're trying to play safe, you're not learning, you're not developing, you're not advancing to any significant degree, if at all. My only caveat to that is learn from it. Don't keep repeating a mistake because you like doing it or that's what you're comfortable doing. Understand what works, what doesn't work, why it works, why it doesn't work, and get smarter, become better because of that. I love your term, emergence of beauty, because when the game is played well, that's exactly what it is to experienced eyes. To Tom's comment about throwing out the baby with the bathwater, I think there's room for all of these things, for deliberate practice, for small area games, for flow drills. It's just the right stuff, Wally, the right time and the right amount. I don't think there's any one method that dominates and makes it so much better than the rest that we can't do some of the others. I don't believe that I can run a good flow drill to try to tie things together if the players are not capable of doing all of the individual pieces that go into that activity. So it's about teaching those things, making sure they understand them, what the expectation is, and then let them free to do it. And I think it was Dean that brought up the one puck thing, and that's one of the things I employ in practice. There's one puck in the game, there's one puck in your activity. Treasure it. If you lose it, you either recapture it and complete, or you go back to the lineup and let the next group go. And very quickly, the players adapt to that. They grasp the significance of the puck and its importance to the game, and possession and control puts you in control of the game. So don't be just getting lazy along the way. And I think, John, you brought up the word purpose. And when I watch practices, when I'm mentoring, I look for one thing. When they're running flow drills, why? If they're running static drills, why? Is there a purpose to it, or are we just filling ice time here? Wally, you were in attendance when I got back into coaching a few years back when, because of my experience, somebody asked me, what drill base are you using? And I go, I don't use any drill base. I have my own that I've designed over the years. If I need to address something in practice, I design an activity that addresses that purpose. And even when you're selecting drills, you don't select them, in my opinion, to try and fill 10 minutes of ice time and make it look interesting or make it look like you know what you're doing. You have a purpose for selecting that drill, and you explain that purpose to your group, and then you let them participate in it and hopefully learn from it. And you correct in the right manner along the way. what else have I got here? Oh, Hal's gone, but he addressed the idea that all of the videos and the courses we're required to take now as coaches, and then he goes and watches those same coaches after they run the sessions, and they're right back to doing what they've always done. And I submit that that's a habit of theirs, that it's more comfortable for them to go to practice and do what they're accustomed to doing than to try something new. And they need to get a little more venturesome too, and they should be encouraged to do that. That's the thoughts I have on a lot of this discussion. It's been great.
I like John's point of experiment, explore. Coaches, they don't dare yet. It takes a lot of confidence and support to do that. Dean, your hand's up. I don't know if you had a chance to get back into the swing here.
Yep, figuring out these Skype controls. Excellent summary, Rick. I love that. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I clarify my comments around the NHL, like what Tom did about situating his comments within a context of time and space and era. I think that, you know, most of us here, or all of us here, we're involved in minor hockey. And I think my commentary around the NHL is I recognize that it's a performance-based entertainment environment. And there's only 736 athletes, more or less, involved there. And we're not coaching any of them. It's elite pro sport. It's outcome oriented. It's performance based. It dominates the headlines, and it's sexy. There's lots of information. We talk about our favorite players, our favorite teams. We mourn the losses and celebrate the wins, and that's fine. There's a place in society for that. But I think that, you know, I just want to make it, you know, on the record here that the majority of our work that we all do, like, we're not working with this population. We're not working with adults for the most part. We're working with young kids and various stages of, you know, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual development. And we need to keep that reality in mind. We need to keep the game in mind through the eyes of the child or the group that we're working with. So I really appreciate what Hal had said, because he said the word fun and he said the word explore. And Wally, you had jumped on that explore word. And I think that the vast majority of us here and the players that we're going to work with for pretty much our entire career are going to be kids developing into adults and into people, not necessarily hockey players. We shouldn't focus on that. It should be people. And I think, Wally, that's where a lot of your recent work comes from, is, you know, working with the coaches, the parents, and the players, and setting expectations. We're using hockey or sport as a vehicle, really, to create better people and people that contribute to our communities, and hopefully they go on and create, you know, or join the Sharks or create forums like this to give back to the youth that they have now passed on, and they're going to become our torchbearers. So I guess my final thing is this. I just want to make sure that, yeah, I think there's stuff that we can watch from pro sport. Maybe we can get some ideas from it, but I still believe that ultimately we need to follow our own model in minor hockey. We need to clarify that. We need to understand it. We need to shape our environmental context and practice and our team culture, not around the outcome and performance based at elite sport, but around the values that we think that we need to teach people. And obviously we can work on contents within the game, but it needs to be, we need to keep that in mind. What level are we working with? What age are we working with? where do we see these kids going? And like John says, the emergence of creativity and beauty, I think that we can get that and achieve that very well through intentional game-based settings. So those are kind of the things I just wanted to kind of clarify where I'm coming from, because I think the conversation today, we've gone all over the place, but it's such a scattershot. I don't think I did a good enough job in kind of couching my commentary, because I'm primarily concerned with minor hockey and let's just say the non-elite, like not necessarily AAA, AA. Most of hockey is that, I think, I don't know if it was Hal that said, you've got the AA people, you've got the B people that think they got screwed, and maybe it was you, Rick, I don't know, and then you've got the other people that want to have access to the same resources, but only half are going to show up. And I do a lot of my work in that third group. I do very little work with a top group. So anyways, I think it's been a great conversation. I appreciate everybody's input here. I'm not saying there's any one right way. I think we all make our own choices, but I think we can all share and learn and challenge each other here. And that's why I kind of enjoyed playing the role of disruptor here today. So thanks for having me on.
Dean, before you leave, the mission statement exercise, when I do it with community hockey, non-competitive, and I do it with elite, I'm taking a different approach now. I used to not talk about outcomes, but now I start with outcomes, that they want to win. And they'd like to get a scholarship. That's the reality of the kids that do make elite. They want to get drafted if they're Bantam boys. I think in community, they want to win. They want to get better. In life, you want to constantly get better. So to learn the life skills you need to be a better player. So I begin with that in the mission statement exercise now. It's one and the same thing, even though the outcome is more weighted, it is weighted in minor hockey. It disrupts the game in minor hockey. So I'm just trying to get a level of perspective at both ends of the spectrum in terms of how serious they're going to play the game. And I think when you do something, whether it's in school, at home, you want to be the best you can be. That's what winning is. And that's the mission statement. Tom Malloy, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, we're in the process right now with this girls hockey Calgary, picking the U15 teams, just sorting everybody out. So there's 160 kids trying out. So they started off, and I've watched 11 games already in the last 4 days or something. Starts off with 8 teams of 20, and they played 2 games, and that filters. Now it's 6 teams, and it'll go to 4 teams on the weekend, and then there'll be a draft. But I saw the difference in. I have one girl out there. Well, a lot of players I coached last year are trying out. So there's one girl that I kind of worried about. I wondered how she'd do in this, because she'd only played hockey for 2 years. She ended up I saw her make 10 consecutive good passes, which is more than most making the whole trial, right? And of course, she'd been through our process and our practices and playing games and all this kind of stuff. And then a player that I've done private things with. So of course you work on the concepts, but there's no pressure, right? And there's no game pressure and all this kind of stuff. Just being in that context, just unbelievably struggled in the same, so far. And I just, I'm just thinking, if you don't do it in practices against pressure and all this kind of stuff, it's really hard when someone's chasing you, you know, to not go back to the old thing and say, okay, winger, it's your job. I'm just going to rim this puck and get rid of it. And, you know, I was really sad for this one girl because it's just something she doesn't do naturally. And that's why I really think that you just have to do things under pressure. Just to do it in a drill kind of thing, it's not realistic enough, right? So yeah, just wanted to throw that in because we're going through that right now, and we have to name, and they're gonna chop another 40, and they all play the level they belong to, but you know, and they'll end up with three AA teams at the end of the whole process. But all these other kids will go to, hopefully they'll get the levels that they belong in.
Tom, your team, because of your approach, I watched them make in one shift 7 consecutive passes in a row. And the girl you're talking about probably benefited from that coming to the camp. I'm watching the U13 tryouts. There aren't 2 passes in a row. So that's hockey sense. There's a lot of deliberate practice, but coaches don't understand, how do you apply that to thinking and making decisions in games? And I think the approach of using games and the balance that you have mastered the art of right stuff, right amount, right time with what you do. Trying to convince coaches, let it go, let them play small area games, they'll figure it out. That's a work in progress.
But you know, the most effective thing we do is a full ice game.
Yeah.
So where they have to make at least 1 pass in each zone, or they 2 seconds or 3 seconds with a puck. You know, so it's not all small area games, it's just games.
I brought that up, Tom, that your game and must pass in each zone. I sat with 2 coaches evaluating players, and they've got their minds made up of the best individual skilled players who look strong and are fast and get first to pucks, but there's no team play whatsoever. So I brought up your drill and I talked about your passing stats that they know they're going to have to keep this year, because that's sort of going to be a mandated part of their coach education. They may not understand or appreciate it, but we're trying to get them to play with it, to learn from it. So thanks, Tom, for everything that you're doing. Dean, you've got your hand up again, and John's hand is still up. I think when you're done, Dean.
I just want to say one thing, Wally. It's Johanny always said, you have rules that cause things to happen. You know, so like if you have a rule that there has to be at least 1 pass in each zone, I can't pass if you don't get open. You know, so it causes, first of all, you break because you think, yeah, I actually do have a chance to get a pass. And, you know, and you get open, and the player has to look around. So it causes the player to look around. It causes some automatic support. I'll let you go with the other guys now.
Dean.
Excellent, Tom. Like that having that purpose and a rationale and intention, and it's, you know, in the academic literature, it's called a constraint. You're placing a constraint. You've got to make 1 pass to advance through the zone or whatever it is. So that's where the intentionality and the coach's understanding of what purpose they want to get out of it, how they apply it. I think it's great. I think the comment about, I think a lot of kids do want to win, and a lot of kids, you know, especially the higher levels, they do, but even kids in rec enjoy winning more than losing. I don't think they dwell on the outcome as long afterwards as maybe some of the other more elite kids do. It might be an individual thing, but I think it's also a byproduct of the level and the expectation put on the kids. There's been a lot of work though done on around fun. And I think the name of one of the researchers is Heather Mannix. And I think she's done a couple of presentations for Hockey USA that's available on their site for the videos. I know she was on the a presentation that I did at a symposium in Finland 2 years ago. It was on COVID, so we had to do it on Zoom. Anyway, her and another person have a lot of really good data on why do kids play sport. And the number one reason across sport, across gender, across ages, and across skills is fun. Hands down, number one is fun. So if the kids are not having fun, and I think it speaks to Wally, what you said about your practices in Bantam, and then after speaking with Ken, you went back to more of a scrimmage or a game-based thing, and you had some great results there. And it would be interesting to ask those kids, how much fun were they having before and after that change was made? Now, deliberate practice would suggest that you don't always have fun. You can't always have fun. There are times where you have to put in some hard work on the shovel, right? But by and large, motivation for kids to play is fun, and outcome and winning was often not mentioned, or it was at the bottom. So I think we need to keep that an open mind to what's the motivation of the kids. And I think it can certainly change in various degrees. And the last thing that I came up with, there's a researcher out of Leeds Beckett University in England, and her name is Dr. Laura, I can't even pronounce it, Bercial. So I don't want to butcher her name, but she talks about, she studies serial winning coaches. And there's another fellow in, I think he was at York who did it too, but this lady talked about common themes in serial winning coaches. And the 4 things that she came out with was, overall, it's an idea. Your rationale for coaching is a form of what she terms driven benevolence. And her themes that she's teased out when interviewing these coaches are philosophy of the coach. And I think we've all come across here today with our various perspectives and our values, our vision, having the right people in the right place, and what kind of environment and culture are set as part of that process. So a lot of, I would call kind of big airy fairy terms, but I think we all realize the importance of these things in our respective coaching. And I think, Wally, you're really trying to help out a lot of that driven benevolence with your mission statement exercise. So I just want to say thanks to really pushing that. And I think it's going to have and continue to have a great impact as you move forward. And I'll shut it off there. I'll stick around, but John, I want to hear your take here as well. But again, guys, it's been great. I appreciate being part of this today. So thank you.
Dean, just want to, before you go, when boys have to have fun to win, boys have to win to have fun, girls have to have fun to win. Now, to me, both can have fun if they define winning as being the best you can be. It's not the score clock. And what I'm worried about at community level, and I'm seeing an example at the U13 level, is if they're not exhibiting effort and good compete, they're not working hard at any level, like not putting in and listening during a practice at community, then they're not going to be the best they can be. So I think in community, I just do equate it to education. You listen, you do your homework, you respect the teacher, you respect your classmates. So I think just making sure you appreciate winning is not the score clock, but it's important that you always try to be your best. So I'll leave it at that and go to John.
Thank you, Wally. Yeah, well, wow, a lot of information here. I mean, it's quite amazing. So, yeah, I just want to add one thing here. Coming from the soccer world, and being fortunate to have plunged in the hockey world when I came here and be part of it. I think we need to understand that it's so much out there that we need or we can learn from it, not only from hockey but other sports. And I think if we go back in time, the first ones, the Russians, Soviets were the first one to, and I would say the Swedish and the Finnish and all these sort of countries had the opportunity to deal with that, because a lot of I read the first books from Tarasov, and when I started learning hockey, I got my hands on every book I could about hockey, skating, Howie Meeker. I remember Jacques Lemaire, all these guys, how to skate and so on. And one of the things that really impacted me is that, Tarasov, Arkady Shershenev, one of the coaches that basically coached with Tarasov and went on to become the coach for the Soviet team, they were pro soccer players. They were very knowledgeable about, they were soccer and they play bandy and they play hockey, and I will honestly say I think they play basketball and all other sports. And one of the maxims of Tarasov was we need to learn from other sports. We need to learn from other domains, as he used to say. So I think here, with all the wealth of knowledge, with all the people that attend to your conferences, I would call this, so much that we can learn and we can keep doing together here to refine what we do. So much. Everything is, I will say, at the end of the day, everything is in front of us. The knowledge is there. And we need to take it. We need to sort of refine it, organize that somewhere, so we can teach also ourselves to how to get this and refine what we do. We are at the prime of our teaching. I think now when we're getting older, I think we're getting wiser, but I think this is where I think we need to share, mentor people if we can, and so we can close that gap between that distance between how we do things and how we transform things. And I think that's the critical thing here. So thank you very much, Wally, to allow me to be here. I think this is a privilege, and I'm very thankful for that. So thank you.
John, when you said Tarasov, learning from other sports, and it's related to Dean's research and Tom's idea of games.
Yes.
More important than the speed of foot and the speed of hand is the speed
of mind.
Yeah. And that's right now. We haven't allowed the mind to be a part of their growth and development, just like in education. We teach great memorizers. We don't teach them how to think in education. And we certainly have work to do in playing a sport and allowing them to think, because these young people are so bright, generation, whatever Z it is, so ahead in what they see, know, understand, interpret, that we may not be ready to coach them unless we listen to them. and let them think and let us know what they think and understand. So questioning is really critical for the coach today. And Darryl Belfry's first book, The Student is the Teacher, is something to really remember, but we must let them think more. So I really want to thank you for coming on. Does anybody else have anything to add to the conversation? I've got a meeting with Tom Rennie, doing the mission statement exercise with his daughter's company, who deal with mental health with sporting associations at all levels. And I think the mental health of sport is fundamental to the good being of society. And this exercise of getting perspective in place in terms of whatever you do in business or sport is critical. And we each compete to make each other better. And I think right now, as a group of coaches here who are going to compete against each other, Tom, I'll see you tonight at the games. You're there to make each other better. And you're going to, when you pick your team, and you're going to try to win. And it isn't a score clock. That's sort of the final result of whether you did the right things or not to develop the kids to be the best they can be. So any other questions, comments? Now, Rick, I always like to resort back to you. You seem to succinctly bring things up. So anything else on your mind at all, Rick?
No, not today, Wally. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I had an opportunity to share my thoughts on it. So I'm full for today.
Tom, is your hand up?
Just one thing that is we learn in patterns, right? So if things are just segmented a little, one thing at a time, things have to have context. So that's why if you can write sentences where you put the first and the last letter and mix all the letters in between, and people can read the sentence, because we know we learn in patterns, and that's what we kind of have to have when we teach anything, or is that it's patterns. That's how the human beings work. So we have to give context to things, and not just little tidbits here and there. So
Tom, I'm just going to ask you a question. Does that relate to the whole method of coaching or teaching?
Well, I guess it does. It just what I found with Hockey Alberta and all that's the whole method was you teach the whole drill, part of the drill, and the whole drill, but they never taught the game. It was all about drills. So I think with anything we learn, we have to have associations and patterns where this fits into the context, eh? And that's why I told a story about the girl that I've given individual things to, but then in the context of the game, she didn't do them.
Yeah.
But the other girl had the context of the game.
Yeah.
And was just comfortable out there making plays. So I think we have to keep that in mind when we're teaching.
No, thank you. That's a clarification for me. I didn't look at whole part whole in terms of drills at Hockey Alberta. I looked at it teaching skills. Okay, breakaway skate, and they handle a puck. Then I go to the part method of going with no puck, one hand on the stick, until we push the imaginary puck ahead, and then a puck ahead at controlling speed. So the progression is in the part. The final result of the skating tactic is full speed, competitive racing with a puck. So that's my interpretation of whole part whole. It doesn't apply to drills. Drill, in my thinking, is, are you accomplishing a purpose? Do they have the skills to do the drill? If they can't pass, do we have to use a whole part whole method and regress and teach them how to pass? And like you did years ago with the midget double A's, they couldn't do the drill. Stationary passing for 2 minutes, the practice went great. They got the feel of the puck. So as a coach, you watch the practice, you watch the drill, you stop the drill, you regress to stationary passing, you went back to it. And that's sort of what I think the art of coaching is in terms of what you decided to do. So, well, everybody, I want to thank you. It was an unbelievable session, John. You're an amazing guy. I'm so glad my granddaughter is playing with Vanessa at the U of M. She's an amazing lady. And Rick, great. I see your hands up. So go ahead, Rick.
That was just an errant mouse key. Didn't intend to put it up.
Oh, darn it.
Sorry,
I
Wally.
figured
Sorry,
out
everyone.
to take it out.
I thought you'd be able to tie the ribbon on the present for tonight, but I don't know what to say. It's just I'm blown away. John, one of the things that I struggle with is the line between theory and research and being practical and getting results.
Wally, I mean, we've been talking about this forever, and I say to Dean, and doing his PhD now, and I think that's where you use the word vacuum, or I think it's a distance between what we preach, what we talk, and what exactly we walk, and that I think that's a gap that we need to feel, because I've been doing this for I started playing with these games, these theories of game empirically 35 years ago. So I've been basically doing it over and over again, refining them. And remember, it's not only about game, it's about the individual. I mean, we just scratch it, the surface of all this domain of using games to teach game sense or game intelligence of IQ, creativity. We just barely touch it, I think. And it's a depth into it that we need to be aware of it. And when we talk about purpose, intentionality, we need to understand that. And then the design itself, when we start designing this game, and Tom, I was going through that, I think, he can agree with that, it's not easy to just design a game with a purpose. Like I said, you can throw a bunch of kids on the ice and play. Hey, they're playing a game, great. No, you need to have a deep purpose into it, understand that relationship and how you're going to achieve that. So I think you have opened the Pandora box, I think, Wally, and then we need to keep diving into it. And yeah, no, it's great. So I think it's a lot of work out there to be done. And I think the coaches need to be exposed to this game design more, because every time I do clinics with soccer coaches or hockey, when we did the mentorship program in Bow River, what I saw is that lack of ability to design, to create that environment. That I think, and not only to create it, but to understand the relationship between what we want to achieve with that. And I think that's the difficult part. So we go back to the easy stuff. Hey, I have drills, I got these drills, so we don't have to worry about it. I have these small area games. There are not small area games, in my view. And that's what I think is a sort of trap where people go in and they're happy with that. And I don't think they search for more or for something different that will bring something different to the player. So that's my take on that, Ollie.
Well, I just in relation to the game idea, and Tom, the debate in hockey, John, and is surfing. Defense, literally pressure early by angling and preventing the puck getting through the zones. And Tom, I found a way to teach it. I might have discussed it with you, but by this game. And the game is 3-puck scrimmage, whole ice, 5 versus 5. And with 3 pucks, it's dangerous if you skate backwards. Playing 1 when there's 3 pucks. So making the rule, you only play attack skating backwards or forwards. So you never skate backwards in that game, which is safer. I learned that at the spring camp because there was a collision with a player skating backwards and a player going the other way with their head down. And that's a good way to teach surfing. It just, you can only skate forwards, all players. So I wanted to share that with you. And that's the drill I did was the teacher. I saw the danger. I thought, my goodness, we're doing surfing. Is this going to be the way of the future, surfing? And it is. The game's going that way. The D are pinching, discouraging the breakout by surfing to the goal line or surfing to the breakout winger. And as Darryl Belfry said, discouraging the breakout pass. So anyway, that's a bit too much of a bit of the theory, but it's about designing a game to teach straight the rule. So I'm saying for surfing, 3-on-3, 3-puck, 8-on-8 versus 8, 3 pucks, only forward skating. It should help, at least in theory.
Remember, I was saying about soccer. I mean, these principles exist even before. I mean, all this terminology who have come lately, everywhere, not only in hockey but in soccer. But when you look back to history or you follow up the game, I mean, you study it. This principle existed before. The pressure, the high pressure, the low pressure, and soccer. While we talk about formation, 1-3-1 in hockey. You know, this who was the Russians used that, and I know the Swedish and the Finns used to use that. They call it the torpedo. And soccer in North America, when they play arena indoor, I use 1-3-1. And my God, again, this stuff has been there for a long time. And it's just, I think, a renewal of people discovering things, or these ideas have come from other places. So I think, like you say, Wally, what you offer the players is like an environment to explore solutions, a problem resolving to be resolved. And I think that's what you're creating, that environment. Now, you don't have your head up, you know it's going to hurt. So there's so many ways to achieve those results everywhere, but I think that's the way to do it, is exploring, creating, designing, and putting the players and give their feedback too. If they like it, they love it, hey, go for it. Then let's go do it. So I think, yeah, I mean, like I say, we can do another, we'll be here until 10 p.m. if we keep going. So, but it's cool. I love it. So it's good stuff.
Okay, everybody, I want to thank you very much. John, I'm so glad that you were able to join us, and Dean,
Wow, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And we've got a really outstanding group of people, but when I'm impressed with you, you were able to take all of our conversations, and I've highlighted when you spoke, and I've written down the times. I'm going to edit your parts.
Thank you.
And post them. And what I do is post the entire presentation first, and then I'll go through it and edit it in sequences of topics.
Oh,
So I'm
great.
really looking forward to this one. It's just that my full-time job now
Oh,
may not
there you go.
give me as much time to do that, but at least it's something saved, and I think forever in the technological space
Good.
of the computer. So, okay, everybody, and Tom, we'll see you
Thank you.
at the rink tonight. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.